Spanning over 30 years, the Transformers franchise has had its fair share of popular misconceptions throughout its history. Some have believed that there is an uncut version of the original 1986 movie that has never been released. Others believe that the War and Fall of Cybertron games are a part of G1 and not part of the Align continuity. And now, thanks to certain recent events in the Transformers franchise, some now believe that Red Bumblebee, Cliffjumper, dies all the time.
Você não consegue acertar Autobot nem se ele estiver parado. Deixa eu te mostrar uma coisa.
Takara's Koro Q racer cars are super deformed motorized versions of licensed cars in which a penny could be placed in the back to perform wheelies. They are known in the US under the name penny racers.
Penny racers, different breed of speed. A whole different breed.
Taking from the success of those toys, Takara used the size of these cars without the pullback motors in their subline of Microman known as Micro Change. One of these slot car style toys was a Porsche 924 Turbo, and it was brought over into the Transformers toy line as Cliffjumper, along with other mini vehicles in 1984. One thing to take note of with Cliffjumper's toy is that his head is attached to a panel, meant to represent the slot where a penny could be placed. Hasbro released a color variant for both Cliffjumper and Bumblebee with their colors swapped. This led some fans to believe that Cliffjumper was merely a remold of Bumblebee, but that was not the case. Hasbro has stated that they did this to make the toy line look bigger than it was. This may have played a factor in both the comic and the cartoon when both characters have had brief instances of being miscolored. Hasbro also released a third mold in Cliffjumper's packaging that transformed into a Mazda Familia. For years, fans referred to this toy as Bumble Jumper, combining Bumblebee and Cliffjumper's names. More on him later. Characterized in his profile by Bob Budiansky, Cliffjumper is the headstrong Autobot whose eagerness to jump into battle can sometimes get him into trouble.
Vamos até lá dar uma lição neles.
Controle seus impulsos, Cliffjumper.
First introduced in the Marvel Comics, Cliffjumper was one of the Autobots aboard the Ark when it crashed on Earth 4 million years ago. Reawakened in the present day of 1984, he unfortunately did not appear much in the comics except for a few battles against the Decepticons. He did make some brief appearances in the UK exclusive stories, such as the Dinobot Hunt. Throughout the rest of the comic, Cliffjumper was largely forgotten about. His final appearance was as a background character aboard the Ark during a battle for leadership on the moon. He wasn't even used in G2 or the Regeneration 1 comics. It was the cartoon where Cliffjumper saw the most prominence. Voiced by Casey Kasem,
Eu também vou. Optimus Prime, eu mal posso esperar para acabar com a graça desses Decepticons.
Tenha calma, Cliffjumper.
Cliffjumper was always the first to jump into battle. A lot of times, this put him in situations that were a bit over his head.
Isso vai demorar muito, Optimus. Temos que andar.
His glass gas gun could take out Decepticon weaponry.
Os truques antigos só funcionam nos maiores asnos.
And he was willing to sacrifice himself for his teammates to knock out a force field to stop the Decepticons.
Vejam, é o Cliffjumper. Ele conseguiu.
His loyalty to the Autobot cause sometimes made him a bit paranoid.
Decepticon! Cliffjumper. Cessar fogo e seguir em frente. Me desculpem. É que eu pensei que fosse Decepticon.
This led him to accuse Mirage of being a traitor. While this was initially not true,
Eu já lhes disse, elas não estavam lá. Eu garanto que estavam e você não informou.
Mirage attempted to trick the Insecticons into battling with the other Decepticons.
Primeiro os Decepticons nos recompensam, depois eles nos roubam. Eu vou esmagá-los, pois não passam de inseto.
His plan didn't work out so well, and Bombshell planted a Cerebro shell into Mirage's head. After leading the Autobots into a trap,
Eu sabia que era uma armadilha.
Mirage was injured during the battle. Ratchet discovered and then removed the Cerebro Shell.
Não admira a miragem ter nos atraído. Certo, Lee. Uma das cápsulas de cérebro de Bombshell. Então, miragem afinal não era mesmo um traidor. Eu jamais quis fazer nada contra meus companheiros Autobots.
After defeating the Decepticons, Cliffjumper regained his trust with Mirage. In Transformers the movie, Cliffjumper worked with Jazz for security on Moonbase 1.
Jazz para base lunar 2.
Although the two were swallowed by Unicron, he was saved by Daniel.
Daniel! Conseguiu!
Consegui!
And then rolled out with Jazz and Bumblebee as they followed Rodimus Prime out of Unicron's eye. He then rejoined his fellow Autobots on Cybertron under Rodimus Prime's command. In the Dreamwave comics, Cliffjumper was part of a group of Autobots attempting to stop the virus that turns organic life into metal. When Shockwave arrived on Earth, Optimus sent Prowl with a group of Autobots out on recon. When they were captured, Mirage gave up without a fight, and Cliffjumper accused him of being a traitor. However, Mirage would later save Cliffjumper when they battled the Decepticons on Cybertron. The Dreamwave comics are also the first to have Bumblejumper appear in fiction. Using a new and shorter name, Bumper was part of a group of Autobots led by Bumblebee on a mission to Earth that attempted to stop the superpowered Seeker known as Sunstorm. Bumper also appeared in the IDW comics when he was killed on a recon mission when Megatron first started up the Decepticons. Cliffjumper also appeared in the IDW comics mourning over Bumper's death. He became a weapons expert during the war, taking out Decepticons as an assassin. His skills were usually quite effective on the battlefield. Unfortunately, Cliffjumper was killed when Unicron attacked Velocitron, and the Autobot's corpse was seen on the surface of Unicron's maw. Outside of G1, Cliffjumper has been a part of many different Transformers series. In the Unicron trilogy, the name of Cliffjumper was used for an Autobot rookie seen in Transformers Energon. While bearing no resemblance to his G1 self, this Cliffjumper joined the Autobots alongside Downshift and Bulkhead. Unfortunately, along with many other major mistakes made in the show, Cliffjumper and Downshift would continually switch voice actors.
Cliffjumper!
And at times were even called by the other's name. While Cliffjumper's toy was recolored and renamed Beachcomber, the cartoon chose to simply make this a powered-up version of Cliffjumper.
I think you really nailed it, Hotshot, and I guarantee the Unicron's got nothing on us now.
The first new toy of Cliffjumper resembling his G1 appearance was in 2006, as a straight redeco of the classic's Bumblebee toy. This began a new trend, still followed frequently today, of simply recoloring any Bumblebee toy red, many times without a new head, and simply calling him Cliffjumper. This trend followed in Transformers Animated, where Cliffjumper had the same body type as Bumblebee and Wasp. He was primarily seen as part of the Autobot Intelligence Division on Cybertron. In the Aligned continuity, Cliffjumper was a playable character in the game Fall of Cybertron, as he and Jazz searched through the Sea of Rust to find out what happened to Grimlock and his crew. He was later seen in Transformers Prime with a brand new vehicle mode.
Você me conhece, Arcee. Não se meta com Cliffjumper.
Ou leva uma chifrada.
No longer just a remold of Bumblebee, Cliffjumper was voiced by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Arcee, sobre aquele apoio que você me falou,
The WWE and movie star was probably way too expensive to continue as the character's voice actor, as Cliffjumper was defeated by a group of Decepticons and later killed by Starscream.
Limpem isto.
Megatron then experimented on the fallen Autobot with Dark Energon, turning Cliffjumper into a mindless zombie Terracon. Attacking both Autobot and Decepticon, Cliffjumper's body was ultimately destroyed when the Decepticon base exploded. While Cliffjumper did not appear in the live-action films directed by Michael Bay, he did receive, like so many times before, numerous red repaints of Bumblebee throughout the movie franchise. The tie-in comics published by IDW even had this Cliffjumper battle alongside his mute counterpart. While initially conceived as a prequel film, the Bumblebee movie saw Cliffjumper with a more G1-styled head battling alongside the other Autobots when Cybertron fell. He escaped to the stars before he was ambushed by the Decepticons Shatter and Dropkick on one of Saturn's moons.
Meu nome é Cliffjumper, tenente da resistência Autobot. Meu retorno em segurança.
Refusing to give them information, the wounded Autobot was killed by Dropkick. After his appearance in the Bumblebee movie, many fans wondered why it seems like a trend that Cliffjumper always dies. While he did die in the IDW comics, in Prime, and in the Bumblebee movie, that wasn't the case for his G1 cartoon self. Cliffjumper's toy was remolded in 1986 as the Autobot Hubcap, but neither of them appeared during the third season of the cartoon. Adding to this, Hubcap was also recolored in chrome red in Generation 2. However, Hubcap didn't appear in the G2 comics either. What really happened is that Casey Kasem became offended when the show created the character Abdul Fakadi, dictator of the fictional nation of Carbamia.
Como Supremo Comandante Militar, Rei dos Reis e Presidente Vitalício da República Socialista Democrática Federativa de Carbômbia, ordena a vocês, Decepticons, que saiam do meu país até o pôr do sol de amanhã.
As such, Casey Kasem quit the show and his characters had to be phased out. Cliffjumper and Bluestreak were not seen again in the cartoon, while Teletran 1 was destroyed by Trypticon along with the Ark. The onboard computer was replaced with Teletran 2, which was voiced by Frank Welker. As for Cliffjumper, he was probably meant to be the Autobot seen behind Cup on Cybertron when Tornadron attacked, since Windcharger was killed in the movie. Coming full circle with his G1 toy's origins, Cliffjumper received a Coro Q version of his toy as part of their Transformers Q lineup of toys. Unfortunately, like many other versions of this character recently, it is a slight remold of Bumblebee, with his feet still shaped like the hood of a Volkswagen Beetle. While the future of Cliffjumper might not look promising in the live-action films, there's always a possibility he could appear in later Transformers series. We can only hope that this headstrong Autobot isn't just another red repaint of Bumblebee, and at least give the guy his proper head.
Olha só o Megatron. Eu vou arrebentar aquela cara de lata velha.
But what do you think? What do you make of all the Bumblebee repaints as Cliffjumper? Does he really die all the time, and do you think he'll make another appearance in a Transformers series? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you like this video, be sure to thumbs up and subscribe. I'd like to thank my patrons for your support. I have many more Transformers videos like this coming soon, so stay tuned. And as always, until next time, till all are one.
Eu sinto muito, meu amigo. A culpa foi minha. Não devia ter atirado no Megatron.
Acho que não devia ter errado o tiro.
Tá certo. Tem toda a razão.